So I want to tell you guys about some crazy swings that happened in my life that were for millions of dollars. Definitely put me on the edge of my seat, so to speak. So first of all, you guys already know about Black Friday probably, where loads of poker players' money got locked up. I was one of them. I actually had the biggest bankroll locked up for Black Friday around 2011 with $4 million locked up, seized basically by the federal government because Full Tilt Poker was not obeying the rules and did a lot of money laundering. Poker Stars did pay out immediately, and matter of fact, I had about 100,000 on Ultimate Bet Poker, and that got paid out to my wild surprise. So that was quite an upswing right there. But Full Tilt for years seemed like it was going to get paid out and wasn't. First swing with that happened was in 2011 when I initially thought I sold my roll to Tom Dwan, who had bought it for something like 80 cents on the dollar. As a matter of fact, what ended up happening was very next day, some news came out. It basically looked like Full Tilt was going to get bought straight away and everyone was going to get their money back immediately. So I called Tom up and asked to get rid of the deal, to cancel it totally. He accepts a small discount on the price that I agreed to. I don't remember the exact price, but it was something like 80-ish cents on the dollar. He also gives a guarantee if Full Tilt doesn't get sold of another $2 million if I don't make any money, and if Full Tilt goes bankrupt. That was quite nice of him to give that, though granted I didn't end up seeing any of that money at all. And for years, it turned out that this dragged on. The sale of Full Tilt went through, and really it was in limbo and no one knew what was going to happen with any of the money. Well, guess what? Fast forward to 2014, I had 80% of my bankroll locked up, and in 2014, I had the very interesting and sudden thing happen where Full Tilt was in fact sold and everyone got their money back by a certain date in that time. And I checked my balance, and sure enough, I was over $4 million richer. Wow, that was a crazy swing. I know for a fact it was in 2014. Also in this year, I had a guy hit me up later. I had the suspicion earlier in the years that I had been hacked for quite a bit of money. I even messaged someone, Jacob Rasmussen, who is Lotnese and Poker Stars. I messaged him. I didn't think he hacked me, but I thought his friend Peter Jepson had hacked me, who had a notorious history and seemed to be conspicuously close to a lot of different poker players' hackings for millions of dollars. Guess what? One day I get a text from Jacob while I'm in Las Vegas. Yeah, I think I've got something for you. And what happens is basically Jacob has caught Peter trying to hack him. Peter is supposed to be his best friend. While Peter was on the hospital bed, Jacob brought him home and had him take care of him. And apparently Peter then installed a Trojan on his device, and then Jacob found it. And then so Jacob said he's going to tell me that Peter hacked me, or Peter can tell himself. So Peter actually told me and told everyone else that he had hacked everyone and had a little breaking down of sorts, or a little come to Jesus moment, you can say. And he said he would return and wire me back the money and a lot of other people the money. And sure enough, he wired back $250,000 to my bank account. Talk about a crazy upswing. And then even in addition to this, I was on a wild upswing in poker and like $1 million plus and won in Las Vegas with the 2K, 4K mixed game and all kinds of stuff. Really seemed to be going in the positive direction. And a friend had told me about an investment opportunity that was, according to the projections, to make $2 million plus if all I do is take out a hard money loan on $4-ish million and post $1 million. Yeah, if I just do that, that'll be cool. And guess what? A huge real estate guy, Kurt Rappaport, would be in on it too, and he'd have his protege help me develop all this. All we had to do is take out this hard money loan. It was a great opportunity. Just really had to get it. We even bought the contract that this other guy, Charles, was really trying to buy back the contract. He wants to pay money to get back the contract to build on top of this place. Build on top of this Hollywood house in the hills, another story, and boom, another $2 million in 9 months. Yeah, definitely a totally great idea. So I'd gotten this. Somehow I was convinced into doing this. How could these guys be leading me astray, my good friends? Well, that was the beginning of that story. Multiple people had warned me not to do it, but at this point I had already invested 100-ish K into this, and I had to kind of cancel that in order to get this to cancel. And I put down a deposit for the loan, and I had to cancel that for, I believe, 200K or so. And I had to basically get rid of the 200K in order to follow through with this and undo the loan. The reason why I did this was basically to be able to do something bigger and bigger and something beyond poker. I just didn't really have the methods behind doing that, or at least something bigger. Let's put it that way. So that was the beginning of that story. On top of this, there was another opportunity of sorts that was in the mix of the Asian group, who is led by Paul Fua, had a number of people arrested by the FBI for sports betting in America, something along these lines. Allegedly, a lot of it wasn't fair. I don't really know if it was, but Paul and his group needed quite a bit of help, and they needed people to post bail that were not themselves. And others helped Paul and the other group, or most of the group, and I was one of the people who was approached to post a 1 million bail for someone, not Paul. The idea was that it would be a bit of a favor, and that the risk, it was not very risky at all. Having looked at the research, I talked to the lawyer to make sure I wouldn't get in trouble. It looked risky, but in fact it wasn't. But basically I had to post 1 million. I don't know if I was going to get it back. So I posted 1 million. I didn't have that $1 million on me for a long time. I got a very nice note from the person saying how they are very, very grateful and will return the favor for sure. So this was another opportunity lurking in the mix. Well, regarding all these things, actually, but about the house, fast forward a bit of time, it turns out that it was a little bit delayed, and we don't really know why it was delayed. And it turns out that basically it's legally not possible to build another story on top of the house, and that the neighbor was not very happy with this and told the people from the beginning that the neighbor wasn't going to have it. It was not going to allow for the story to be built on top of the house. So we had a major problem. You no longer build another story on top of the house, and I keep paying the loan. I had to pay $40,000 a month for this hard money loan, and it was just for a year. So 2015 runs around, and I figured in 2014, as long as I didn't have a downswing, that everything would be good and that I'd be able to fund this thing. And really a lot of things had to go wrong. Well, guess what? I did in fact have a downswing. I started playing Deuce to 7 and other mixed games and other kinds of games. And sure enough, when you enter the fray in these kinds of spots, there's going to be a downswing at some point, especially earlier on. And I seemed to be running horrible. Maybe I was wrong about some things, but things were just not going very well. And around this time in 2015, I had a downswing. I was burning $40,000 a month every month. Couldn't figure out what to do with this house. Was trying to sell it at some point, and I couldn't sell it also. And it didn't go up in value. It actually went down in value, meaning I had to take a bigger hit than I had thought was possible with the house. Another thing I forgot to mention was I also bought some artwork that was supposed to liquidate allegedly around this time or by this time, and it was just not liquidating. A lot of these sort of strange private investments just weren't working out too well for me. It also turned out that this guy who hacked me hadn't quite returned all of the money, but he had returned part of it to everyone. So it sounded like he didn't return all of what he cheated me, or at least it was very likely, and definitely not all of what he cheated everyone. There was a bit of a downswing in that too, that I didn't quite get all the money I was cheated out of. That one develops later. Basically, everyone ends up taking that guy to court. As far as this house thing was going and this down thing was going, things even got worse. So it's still early 2015. I decide to play at Commerce. I'm playing, I'm losing, I'm just losing, and nothing's really seems to be going right. End up playing Chinese poker. I'm mostly losing. There's a guy, Aussie Matt. I was beating him at a 500K on Chinese poker. I think he can't possibly be better than me. And then all of a sudden he starts winning all of it back and just keeps totally annihilating me at Chinese. I lost everything, all that 500K all the way back from Matt. Apparently there's a great opportunity in Panama, and I go check that out for poker. That one turns out to be a dud too, unfortunately. I remember playing poker on my phone while grinding in Panama City, walking around on this beautiful island and around a beautiful park around that area. Panama City is very beautiful, by the way. It's worth checking out. There's still even some poker there, and Sordid Casino, something like this. So me and my ex-girlfriend went to Bocas del Toro, very beautiful island. So there was definitely some pluses, but in the meantime, I'm just not doing very well financially. A lot of things just aren't working out too well for me. I ended up going to Monaco and playing some large PLO games, public PLO games with Ben Lam, Rafia Mitt, Matt, Aussie Matt, these kinds of guys. And with this guy, Fred Sines from the UK, he convinces me to lend him 200K for some reason, which I give him shortly after. I'm told by a couple people that this was not a very smart move. I thought he was friends with a couple of the people at the table. Turns out he's maybe not the nicest person. No matter how I ask and plead for the money, I just don't get it back from him. The game even breaks because of this reason. There's multiple people boycotted the game and didn't want to like win this kind of money this way. So I had been out another 200, and that was really a low point in my career. Actually, my one sort of subtle upswing of sorts is my ex-girlfriend stuck with me all this time, even though a lot of bad things were happening to me, and there weren't really any problems in our relationship. If anything, she was comforting during this time. So you could call that quite an upswing, quite some hidden luck, you can say, of some inevitable life leaks of mine. Yeah, still this house thing's burning money. At some point, even the hard money loan ran out. Guess what though? I had got my 1 million posted bail back shortly with no problems for the Asian group. And guess what? They had a poker game while WSOP was going on. So I flew from there out to Montenegro. I now was part of a game where it was a no limit hold'em game, which is my best game. And I was playing with what I thought were pretty soft opponents compared to what I was used to compared to online games for a 4 million Hong Kong dollar buy-in. And that is no small game. That's over $400,000 US. I didn't quite have the funds to fund myself for this game, so I did manage to get a backing deal, and I thought all was going to be well. It looked like I was going to get out of things again, and it turned out that lost the first session. I played some props, and that the people that were running the game and some of the backers were very angry with this, and I just didn't realize that that was a problem. Then I lost and lost and lost some more, and lost something like 20 plus million. Not a huge swing for the stakes, but the people are very upset. Or got to 30 million at some point. Someone named Chairman had arrived in the game, and the game got twice as big. And guess what? I started running hot and thought, okay, this is my way out of this. And things were going very well, only to lose a lot of it back towards the end of the night, and eventually even get into the hole. At some point, the game switched to PLO, and my phone had died. Then I lost a little bit more money, and it turns out that some of the backers had canceled their share because they didn't think too highly of my PLO game, and which cost me another $100,000. So at this point, I was in really some deep stuff, and this was quite a difficult moment. I was like very, very despondent during this moment. Actually, in fact, Phil Ivey sent me a little text to make sure I was feeling okay, because I was very obviously in distress at this point, and still remember that moment where he sent that. Really quite rocked from all this. The good news was part of the upswing was it was in Montenegro, and there was some beautiful areas around, like in Kotor. It's very beautiful to take a boat out and go around that kind of area. Yeah, in the midst of all this, with my backers shaken and my bankroll kind of spiraling, it didn't seem like things were going too well. Well, the bad news was, after all that, I was down about 40 million Hong Kong dollars, but I played a session and I won 30 million back. So I was back to minus 10, which is not that much at all in these kinds of games. Remember, the buy-in's 4 million Hong Kong dollars. So I was minus 10 million overall at the end of that session. It wasn't so bad, but guess what? More bad news. So someone who I had a share with, Yi was his name, who was berating some of my play in the beginning of the game. He comes to me and tells me about how he has lost loads of money, and it turns out that his loss, or my share of his loss anyway, is worth minus 800K. Yeah, not a great situation, or at least the share of the game was worth around this large of an amount. So I thought, wow, this is some crazy stuff. More bad news. At least this one was tolerable, and he was willing to be patient and like deal with it as things went on. So yeah, I had that added to the whole fray of what's going on. I go back to Las Vegas. Good news is I did end up winning there. Bad news was I was still on my downswing. Things were just going worse and just not great online. I was not winning somehow. I played even couple 100K sit and goes with Leon Desernick on the internet. I thought this was a great shot to get out of things. Guess what? Leon beats me a couple times. Does very well. I mean, he ran hot, but also played better than you might expect with some good intuitive play. Yeah, just puts me further into the hole. I happen to have someone help me and someone take my share and support with backing, all of that later in the year. And this ended up being very, very pivotal to my success. In the midst of this, I did take another couple travel trips to Monaco Monaco and elsewhere, and to Manila playing this very, very large game with Chairman and these other Asian guys with the same group, the $4 million buy-in game. I had to push to get in. I had to kind of hustle to make sure that my share was still taken because people were not so confident in me. In fact, many of my friends, by the way, had played in this game and lost and given up, including, if you call Ike Haxon a friend, Ike had also played and lost. Igor Kurganov had played and lost. Philip Grusom had played and lost. Many players basically just kind of gave up and didn't try to win in this game. It was a little bit tougher than people expected, but still it's very beatable. There's probably a lot of run bad. Another bit of a downswing was once when I was in this game, I got very upset because I played a hand against someone. I was sure there's a really good chance they had me beat. I had 2 pair. I played it really, really passively. I ended up like just calling a raise, check turn, just check calling river with like kings up and losing to king queen with 2 pair of kings and queens, and just out of frustration, like I bang the table with a chip and it like flies past Chairman's ear, and he's just like, what's going on? And Chairman's like really the big boss, so he's like furious at me for a second, and everyone's kind of mad at me actually, or was mad at me at that, and it looked like maybe I was going to get kicked out of the game. But the good news was Chairman seemed to like me, and they seemed to find, him and his buddy Shanghai Wong seemed to find it funny that I would get angry, lose. I wasn't too angry at them or do anything hateful towards them. So that happened to not really hurt me too much. A good thing the Asians like when you do crazy things a little bit, or some of them do. Yeah, so I was losing the entire time. People were like kind of not hesitant about taking my share in this game. I had to keep kind of hustling to get back in, but the good news is I was in. At some point, it hit me to take a look at the solver and take a look at the game and start studying. And I'm sure glad that I did that, because when I did, I discovered a lot of things that I was missing in the game. I realized really the depth of the quote-unquote intelligence of the solver that I was witnessing, and realizing, whoa, okay, there's a lot to this here. I should take a look more. And to this day, I probably should take a look at the solver more. There's loads of things where people thought it was one way for the longest time, and it turns out it was just not. There were loads of possibilities that people missed, and loads of sizings and things that people are way off for a huge amount of the time. Yeah, this changed my game quite a lot, and while I was on quite a downswing, at some point I went on a big upswing, winning loads and loads very fast late into the year. It was thanks a bit of the help to the solvers and taking a deeper look at my game for no limit and for mixed, all these things. And it turns out that I had to refinance the house, or I was going to foreclose on it. And matter of fact, the government put a lien on my account on my house because I needed to pay the taxes to the US government for almost $2 million. So I had to refinance this house, is what I had to do. I didn't sell it at this point, to pay off the government some of the taxes. And I didn't quite have the money, but it turned out that I had won enough. And it turned out that as I was starting to win in the private games, at some point after studying the solvers, I go on a big upswing. I start winning hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even $1 million or so. But lurking on the horizon, as I find out, the government has put a lien on my bank account because I haven't paid all the taxes from 2014, my mistake, and I need to pay those taxes. In the midst of this, I've got to refinance my house and liquidate quite a bit of money to pay off the government, and I've got to actually cash out money in addition to all of that. It just so happens that someone's able to cash out the money from online and get it to my US bank account in order to pay this lien. From the art I mentioned before, there was a piece that did reasonably well. It turns out I was able to sell it to someone and get a share of that. And on top of that, well, that deal couldn't close until an additional week, but it so happened that Eric Seidel was able to loan me against this money that I was getting in a week, so that I would have just enough to pay off this lien against my account for the year of 2015. So I managed to clear my account, clear all the taxes for this year. There happened to also be a very big game going on for this group that was playing the $4 million buy-in in Asia, in Manila. There's a crazy game that happened in Manila with this Asian group. Mustafa was there, Timofey Kuznetsov was there, Phil Ivey was there, Rui Cao, Tom Dwan. So funny enough that me and Tom were now playing beside each other in spite of our differences, trying to make money and get out of our problems. And we're playing a $1 million buy-in. Chairman has said no one can sleep until they lose $1 million, or actually 10 million Hong Kong dollars. So it happened that this game lasted for 72 hours. In the midst of the 72 hours, I had 1 hour of sleep. I actually kind of wish I got more than 1 hour because I was definitely not playing ideal. And I have a call in the middle of the game to refinance the house because the hard money loan is no longer in place. It only had lasted for a year, which is brilliant. Now I know about that. So I had to just give them all my details and make sure I get approved for this thing. It was much more reasonable loan now, 3% yearly, no longer hard money. Unfortunately, I was approved, I guess because I paid the hard money. So I was able to save my bankroll from getting bankrupted by this house. And even though I ended up losing for the session, ended up being okay because even though I was still a bit on a downswing during this 4 million plus Hong Kong dollar game, it may surprise you guys to learn that eventually, as time went on, more and more, I ended up becoming the biggest winner in that game overall over the next couple of years. So that game ended up bringing me to other sorts of opportunities that played for even bigger games. As a matter of fact, the good news was, in spite of my behavior, people still tolerated me until I changed it. I played quite slow. It was definitely quite reactive at the poker table, generally not taking things very well. I still have a little bit of that in me, to be fair, but people are quite nice since then. With the selling of the property, there were a lot more things going into this than I had originally thought. So I had turned down a couple offers to sell the property. One where a guy said his highest offer was 6 million-ish. He said that was his final offer, and for whatever reason I didn't believe him or thought the property would go up in value more. I really wish I took that offer but couldn't go back and take it. There were other guys who offered like 5.8 or so. I tried to go back and take that offer but couldn't take it. Tried to rent it out, and it turns out you can't like list the property and also put it on for renting. There was some kind of issue with renting the property and listing it. It turns out I couldn't really do that somehow. And also, no one was taking care of it, and no one told me that I needed to take care of it, especially in order to show it and rent it out. So the floor panels got really bad and all that, and yeah, it just ended up it ended up being loads of different problems that no one had ever told me about. One funny detail is that sometime by the end of 2014, I had a bit of a crazy house party where Justin Smith had organized it. There were many well-known people that had come and been a part of this thing. So I had a few celebrities at my house. I had Pamela Anderson at my house. Kind of nuts. Rick Solomon was there too, Andy Milonakis, and some other well-known people in Hollywood. So it's kind of cool that I got that as some kind of interest, you can say. I don't know what that's worth in terms of monetary value, but it's a nice bonus to all these sorts of funny things. Definitely during this period, it wasn't all bad. There's lots of fancy places in the midst, good food, and relaxing times at the very least. For the end of this house, I ended up selling it for a much worse price than the other offers I could get. And in retrospect, I really just needed to get rid of this thing straight away, which I did learn from. I absolutely learned that lesson. There's some other issue that I had where I realized, man, I really just not need to like be too greedy with these sorts of prices and just let it go when something's not a good investment. And I ended up losing at least 1.5 million plus on a house, up to 2 million plus. But the good news is I was still wealthy and still had, a huge portion of my net worth, and hopefully learned some valuable lessons from all of this. The biggest lessons being to be much more cautious when trusting people, not trusting people with their intentions, but also trusting people in terms of making sure their actions line up with their words and making sure the business deals are properly put in place. Well, to finish with that, I hope that these lessons can be taken and put into a place on a bigger scale. I believe that actually they may be for myself, because I plan on doing things beyond at stakes that are much higher in a way. And I think that things don't turn out exactly how you would expect them to, even when they seem very bad or when they seem very good. There's a lot of positive and negative lurking around the corner, and it makes sense to quote unquote play your best game as these situations develop.